Today, we're going to talk about something truly heartbreaking. This explainer is about the Milestone School crash in Dhaka. We're going to walk through what happened on July 21st to try and understand the events and the absolutely devastating human cost. 36. That's the number that this tragedy begins with. 36 lives were lost. It's a number that represents an absolutely immeasurable loss for an entire community. Okay, so to really get a grasp on what happened, let's just lay out the basic, undisputed facts. The date was July 21st, 2025. The location, the Milestone School in Dhaka. And the incident itself was the crash of a Bangladesh Air Force F-7 BGI fighter jet. But how did this even happen? Well, to understand that, we have to look at the moments just before the impact. The story really shifts to the pilot, who suddenly found himself in a completely impossible situation. The person at the center of this was the pilot, Flight Lieutenant Tokir Islam Sagar. For him, the emergency started in an instant, the moment he completely lost control of his F-7 fighter jet. So in those final desperate moments, Flight Lieutenant Sagar wasn't just a passenger to his fate. No, he was actively fighting to prevent a catastrophe. You have to imagine he's desperately searching for any empty field, any open space to bring the jet down without hurting anyone. But his attempts, they just didn't work. The aircraft ultimately slammed into the main gate of the school building. And, right after the crash, there was this glimmer of hope. The pilot was actually rescued from the wreckage. He was alive, but his injuries were just too severe, and sadly, he later died at the hospital. The pilot's death, as tragic as it is, was just one part of this story. Because on the ground, the human cost of that impact was, well, it was catastrophic. And here's the detail that turns this from a terrible accident into an almost unimaginable tragedy: the timing. It couldn't have been worse. The jet crashed during school hours. The campus was full of students, teachers, staff, and that one single fact just exponentially increased the number of casualties. On top of the fatalities, an incredible 172 people were injured in the crash and the chaos that followed. You can just imagine the scene. Local hospitals were completely overwhelmed. And of those 172 people who were hurt, 25 of them were in critical condition. For these families, the tragedy wasn't just a moment in time, it was the start of a long, terrifying, and uncertain road to recovery. But when you really break down who was lost, that's when the true horror of it all just hits you. One pilot, 3 teachers, and 32 students. The vast, vast majority were children. Kids whose lives were cut short in a place where they should have been completely safe. We can look at the numbers, we can understand the sequence of events, but none of it can really capture the depth of the grief. And it just leaves you with this one overwhelming question. How does a community, a city, a nation, how do you even begin to heal from a wound this deep? What does recovery even look like when the heart of your future has been so terribly, terribly broken?